crazy. Justin Jefferson, the highest paid receiver in football, is visibly melting down on the sidelines. And J.J. McCarthy, the guy they bet their entire future on, just posted a quarterback rating that's literally worse than if he had just spiked the ball into the dirt on every single play. Let me hit you with the stat that should terrify every single Vikings fan watching this right now. According to True Media, J.J. McCarthy currently ranks 851st out of 852 qualified passers in expected points added per dropback in NFL history. The same guy who flamed out of the league after 3 seasons, the same guy the Raiders handed $39 million to and got absolutely nothing in return. That's the only company J.J. McCarthy is keeping right now. Not Patrick Mahomes, not Josh. And right now, that bet is looking like one of the worst organizational decisions in recent memory. The most recent game against the Green Bay Packers was absolute rock bottom, and I really wanted the Vikings to pull this one out because, as a Cowboys fan, a Vikings win would have made that Packers draft pick in the Micah Parsons trade way more valuable for Dallas. But instead, we got to watch the Vikings get absolutely embarrassed at Lambeau Field, losing 23-6 in a game that wasn't even as close as the score suggests. J.J. McCarthy completed 12 of 19 passes for just 87 yards with 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. His passer rating for that game was 34.2. Let me put that in perspective for you. Do you know what a quarterback's passer rating would be if they literally just spiked the football into the ground on every single play without even attempting to complete a pass? 39.6. J.J. McCarthy's actual performance in an NFL game was worse than intentionally throwing the ball into the dirt every single time. Think about how insane that is. He actively made his team worse by trying to play quarterback than if he had just given up on every single snap. The first half wasn't even terrible by McCarthy's standards. He went 7 for 11 for 62 yards. But here's the thing. Kevin O'Connell knew he couldn't trust his quarterback to actually win the game, so he called 15 running plays and only 12 passes. They were actively trying to hide their first-round pick. They were game planning around keeping the ball out of his hands as much as possible. Then the second half happened. A special teams mistake put them in an 11-point hole, and suddenly McCarthy had to actually throw the football to give his team a chance to win. That's when everything completely fell apart. 2 interceptions, multiple missed throws, receivers running wide open with McCarthy either not seeing them or sailing the ball 10 yards over their heads. It was painful to watch. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, McCarthy reported concussion symptoms on the flight back to Minnesota. He's now in concussion protocol and is expected to miss this week's game against the Seahawks. Oh, and by the way, this means he's now missed 23 of 29 possible games in his career due to various injuries. The guy can't stay healthy on top of everything else. Let's talk about those Sam Darnold comparisons, because this is where Vikings fans have to be absolutely losing their minds. Last season, Darnold went 14-3 as Minnesota's starter. He threw 35 touchdown passes and made the Pro Bowl. Yes, he struggled in the last couple games, including that playoff loss. But overall, he was phenomenal in Kevin O'Connell's system. The Vikings could have kept him. They could have at least franchise tagged him as insurance in case McCarthy wasn't ready. Instead, they let him walk to the Seattle Seahawks on a 3-year, $100.5 million contract. So how's Sam Darnold doing in Seattle right now? Oh, nothing major. Just 2,785 passing yards, 19 touchdowns, a 69.5 completion percentage through 11 games while leading the Seahawks to an 8-3 record. And here's the absolutely brutal part. Guess who the Vikings play this Sunday? The Seattle Seahawks. So J.J. McCarthy, sitting in concussion protocol, gets to watch his undrafted rookie backup face off against the quarterback the Vikings let walk away. You cannot write a script more painful than this for Minnesota fans. But wait. There's more. Daniel Jones spent the end of last season on Minnesota's practice squad after the Giants released him. He wanted to come back to the Vikings. They offered him good money, but they told him flat out that he wasn't going to compete for the starting job because that job belonged to J.J. McCarthy. So Jones went somewhere he could actually compete, the Indianapolis Colts. And guess what? He won that competition. Daniel Jones is now having a solid season with Indy, currently ranking 7th in passing yards and 9th in passing touchdowns. He looks completely rejuvenated and is playing some of the best football of his career. And then there's the Aaron Rodgers situation, which might be the most mind-blowing of all. The Vikings had actual legitimate conversations with the four-time MVP about joining Minnesota. This would have been the ultimate revenge tour, following Brett Favre's career path from Green Bay to Minnesota. Rodgers was interested. The Vikings said no. They told one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history that they were going with J.J. McCarthy instead. So Rodgers signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he currently has 19 touchdown passes against just 7 interceptions with a 66.4 completion percentage. Let me summarize this for you. The Minnesota Vikings had a Pro Bowl quarterback who won 14 games in their system. They had a former first-round pick who wanted to compete for a job. They had a 4-time MVP who wanted to bring his talents to Minneapolis, and they said no to all 3 of them because they believed in J.J. McCarthy. One anonymous league executive told The Athletic that what the Vikings did was absolutely crazy. And you know what? That executive is 100% right. This might go down as one of the biggest organizational miscalculations in modern NFL history. Diana Russini from The Athletic just dropped a massive column about the state of the league, and the Vikings section was absolutely devastating. She wrote about how everyone around the NFL is asking the same question. What happened to the Minnesota Vikings? And here's the part that should worry Vikings fans the most. It's not just people outside the organization asking that question. According to Russini's reporting, inside the building, inside that locker room, there are people wondering how different this season might look with better quarterback play. That's massive. That means even people within the organization are questioning the decision to go all in on McCarthy. Russini laid out the entire situation in brutal detail. The Vikings took a massive and costly swing this offseason, spending more money than any other NFC team. They walked away from a 14-game winner in Sam Darnold. They lost Daniel Jones to the Colts. They passed on Aaron Rodgers. And according to her reporting, money wasn't even the issue in any of those situations. It ultimately all came down to betting on 22-year-old J.J. McCarthy coming off major knee surgery. From everything Russini gathered, there were actually differences of opinion inside the building, with some people in the organization wanting to keep Sam Darnold. But they decided collectively to back McCarthy, and now that decision is exploding in their faces. Tom Pelissero went on the Rich Eisen show and tried to put a positive spin on things, but even he couldn't hide how dire the situation has become. He talked about how challenging it's been for McCarthy and how young quarterbacks need opportunities to stack reps. But here's the reality. It's not working. Through 6 starts, McCarthy has shown almost no improvement. In fact, you could argue he's actually getting worse as the season progresses. The comparisons to Christian Ponder are absolutely haunting. ESPN's Kevin Seifert pointed out that the only Vikings quarterback in the last 30 years to throw multiple interceptions in 3 straight games was Ponder back in 2012. And we all know how that worked out for Minnesota. The statistical comparisons through 6 starts are eerily similar. Ponder was 1-5 with a 56.3 completion percentage, 1,423 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. McCarthy is 2-4 with a 54.1 completion percentage, 929 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. He actually has fewer touchdowns and more interceptions than Ponder had at this point in his career. Since 2010, only 3 first-round quarterbacks have posted dollars per season. He's in the absolute prime of his career. He should be putting up numbers that cement his legacy as one of the all-time greats. Instead, he's stuck watching passes sail over his head while his quarterback talks about his alter ego named Nine and posts TikToks that make fans cringe. After the Packers' loss, Jefferson's frustration was impossible to hide. He told reporters it's frustrating to lose and frustrating to come up here and say the same things every single week while expecting something to change, only to find themselves in the exact same position. Cameras caught Jefferson on the sideline visibly upset, trying to rip his helmet off in frustration as McCarthy continued to struggle. It wasn't just one play that set him off, it was the accumulation of an entire season, watching his prime years get wasted. To his credit, Jefferson has been publicly supportive of McCarthy. He keeps saying the right things to the media. He's not throwing his quarterback under the bus in press conferences. But you can see the frustration building with every game. Vikings offensive coordinator Wes Phillips praised Jefferson for never shying away despite the circumstances, but how long can you ask one of the best players in the entire NFL to be patient while his career gets derailed? Here's where things get really interesting. With McCarthy in concussion protocol, the Vikings are likely turning to undrafted rookie Max Brosmer for this week's game against the Seahawks. And honestly, some Vikings fans are actually excited about this possibility, which tells you everything you need to know about how McCarthy has been playing. The fact that fans would rather see a complete unknown than their first-round pick is absolutely damning. Brosmer is a 24-year-old who played college ball at New Hampshire and then Minnesota. He went undrafted in April, but Kevin O'Connell has apparently been impressed with him since watching him throw at the Gophers Pro Day. In the preseason finale against the Titans, Brosmer completed 15 of 23 passes for 161 yards and a touchdown. Those are better numbers than anything McCarthy has put up in actual games that mattered. And here's where this gets really awkward for the Vikings. If Brosmer comes in against the Seahawks and actually plays well, it puts the organization in an incredibly uncomfortable position. Albert Breer reported that the Vikings want to gather as much information as possible on McCarthy before making decisions about the 2026 season. But what if your undrafted free agent backup comes in and outplays your first-round pick? What do you do then? The Brock Purdy comparisons are already flying around social media. Mr. Irrelevant comes in off the bench, outplays the highly touted prospect, and takes the job permanently. Could that happen in Minnesota? Right now, after watching McCarthy struggle for 6 straight games, a lot of Vikings fans wouldn't mind finding out. Given the talent on this roster, it honestly wouldn't shock me if Brosmer came in and performed better. How hard can it be to just throw bombs to Justin Jefferson? Honestly, it can't be that difficult. So where do the Vikings go from here? According to ESPN's Dan Graziano, the idea of Minnesota having a different starting quarterback in 2026 is not an overreaction. He wrote that, at the very least, the Vikings will want to bring in a veteran quarterback to compete with McCarthy next year, similar to what the Colts did with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. Think about the irony there for a second. The Vikings might follow the exact blueprint of bringing in Daniel Jones, the same Daniel Jones they let walk away last offseason, to compete with J.J. McCarthy. You cannot make this stuff up. But I don't see the Colts letting Daniel Jones leave after how well he's played for them. There's even speculation that Aaron Rodgers could be back in play for 2026, the same Aaron Rodgers they passed on just 1 year ago. If Rodgers decides to keep playing and the Vikings come calling again, what does that say about the entire McCarthy experiment? It would be an admission that they got it completely wrong. The reality that Vikings fans have to face is this: their team built the NFL's most expensive roster at $350 million for the 2025 season. They brought in Pro Bowl defenders. They signed veteran players at every position. And all of that investment, all of that money, all of those resources are being completely wasted, while a quarterback who clearly needed more time to develop is getting thrown to the wolves and drowning. Diana Rossini quoted Kevin O'Connell from back in September, where he talked about how NFL teams cycle through young quarterbacks too quickly and often have only themselves to blame when those quarterbacks don't develop properly. Now O'Connell is staring at that exact same scenario playing out in real time with his own team. The waves are getting taller and more violent with every passing week, and nobody knows if McCarthy can learn to swim before the entire ship sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Look, I want to be fair here. J.J. McCarthy might still figure it out eventually. He's only 22 years old. He's got physical talent. The arm strength is there. But right now, in this moment, in these circumstances, he's playing worse than almost every quarterback we've seen in the past quarter century. The only guy ranking below him is Jamarcus Russell, the poster child for first-round quarterback busts. His completion percentage is dead last among qualified starters. He leads the entire league in bad throw percentage. His decision-making has been terrible. His accuracy has been inconsistent. And the worst part is he's doing all of this on a team that was specifically built to win championships right now. The window is closing on this Vikings roster. Justin Jefferson is in his prime. Aaron Jones isn't getting any younger. The defense they've invested in won't stay intact forever. This was supposed to be their year to make a serious Super Bowl run, and instead they're 4-7, having lost 3 straight games, watching their season circle the drain because they bet everything on a quarterback who wasn't ready. The J.J. McCarthy situation didn't just get worse since we last talked about it. It got historically, catastrophically, record-breakingly bad. And the scariest part for Vikings fans is that nobody seems to know how to fix it. You can't just magically teach a quarterback to process information faster or make better decisions under pressure. You can't wave a magic wand and suddenly give him the instincts and pocket presence that elite quarterbacks have. Those things take time to develop, and the Vikings don't have time. Not with this roster. Not with this championship window. Not with Justin Jefferson's prime years slipping away. The anonymous executives around the league calling the Vikings crazy aren't wrong. This was a massive organizational gamble that has blown up spectacularly. The Vikings had every opportunity to prevent this disaster. They had multiple veteran options who could have kept them competitive while McCarthy developed on the bench or in limited action. Instead, they chose to bet everything on him being ready immediately, and that bet has failed in the most dramatic way possible. So, what should the Vikings do moving forward? That's the million-dollar question that nobody seems to have a good answer for. Do you keep starting McCarthy and hope he somehow figures it out despite showing no signs of improvement? Do you turn to Max Brosmer and see if lightning strikes with an undrafted free agent? Do you start making calls to veteran quarterbacks who might be available for next season? Do you call Sam Darnold and grovel for forgiveness? Do you reach back out to Aaron Rodgers and admit you made a mistake? There are no good options here. Every path forward involves some level of embarrassment or admission of failure. But the Vikings have to do something because what they're doing right now clearly isn't working. They're wasting a championship-caliber roster. They're wasting Justin Jefferson's prime. They're wasting the investments they made in building what was supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. And with every passing week, with every loss, with every historically bad statistical performance from McCarthy, the hole gets deeper and harder to climb out of. The Vikings faithful came into this season with legitimate Super Bowl expectations. They thought they had everything in place to make a deep playoff run. Instead, they're watching their season implode in real time while their first-round quarterback posts numbers that make Jamarcus Russell look competent by comparison. This is not where anyone expected the Vikings to be, and it's going to take something dramatic to turn this ship around before it's too late. All right, now I need to hear from you in the comments. What should the Vikings do moving forward? Should they stick with J.J. McCarthy and hope he develops? Or is it time to admit the experiment failed and move on? Would you want to see Max Brosmer get a shot, or should they be making calls to veteran quarterbacks? And Vikings fans, how are you feeling about this entire situation? Are you still holding out hope that McCarthy turns it around, or have you seen enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because this conversation is far from over. If you found this breakdown valuable and want to stay updated on all the latest NFL drama, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. We're covering all the biggest stories, controversies, and developments across the league. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, drop a Go Vikings in the comments if you're a Minnesota fan suffering through this nightmare, or tell me which team you support and how you'd feel if your franchise was going through this disaster. This is your boy Mike, and I'm out. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and let's hope the Vikings find some answers before their season completely falls apart. The baseball world is about to explode, and the Philadelphia Phillies find themselves standing at the epicenter of what could be the most devastating offseason earthquake in franchise history. While fans are still nursing their wounds from another playoff disappointment, a dangerous predator has emerged from the shadows of the American League East, ready to rip the very heart out of Citizens Bank Park. The Boston Red Sox, flush with cash and desperate to reclaim their throne, have set their sights on not one but two of Philadelphia's most beloved stars, and what happens next could determine whether the Phillies remain championship contenders or collapse into irrelevance.